for good grades.
I wish I was better at relationships.
I wish I was an artist.
I wish I had a better relationship with my wife.
I wish for a life full of happiness.
I wish I may. I wish I might have the wish. I wish tonight.
Hi, welcome to Monday. Today's podcast is going to be about what we tell our kids. Specifically, do you tell them there is a Santa? And have you thought about that decision? Before I get started, don't forget to check below. There is a link to a guide that I have put together that is a chance for you to see what it's like to work with a life coach, the types of things I might ask, the types of things I might get you to think about. And then once you download that guide, you'll have a small interaction with me through 4 emails. And at the end of the email, there is an opportunity to purchase a video that will help you go through the booklet if you tend to put things like that off. Okay, so here we are, November 21st, and we're fast approaching to Christmas. And Christmas is such a huge portion of our culture. And in some ways, it's trickling into being a portion of many different cultures. And other cultures are more free to share their festivities. And we as a world are learning more about how each of us celebrate different things that have happened in our cultures. So when I first was pregnant and looking forward to being a mom, I happened to pick up a parent magazine. And in that magazine, there was an article. And of course, it was the age-old question, do you tell your kids that there is a Santa? Are you going to lie to them? So I grew up in the system. There were many lies that I had heard and seen and different concepts of what life is like and what I was actually seeing and living. And so here I sat with this little being inside of me wondering, oh, I hadn't even thought about it. I hadn't considered it because it was just something that we grew up with. And the comment in the article was, how do you want to move forward in this relationship with your child? And I decided then and there that I wanted to be able to have my words mean something. And if you have gone ahead and told your child there is a Santa, this is not me sitting in judgment of you. It is just me wanting to explain part of where I think we go wrong in certain aspects of how we live before our kids. I remember the first time that I discovered or felt that my adults in my world were not able to keep me safe. The adults in my world were not as indestructible as I thought they were. And I think we all have that time in our life, whether we come from a good home or a not so great home. And it's a bit earth-shattering if it hit you in that way. Maybe for some it didn't, but I have heard others speak of this and I myself experienced this. And so if we think about all of the things we do with our children, the things we want them to believe, I wanted to make sure that I set up for them a condition that they could believe. So I remember the first time I actually felt that my words needed to mean something, and I was dating at the time, and I was having a moment with my boyfriend and tickling and being silly. And I was going in to kind of horse around some more, and he could barely breathe because I had been tickling him, and he was begging, please don't. And I remember thinking, I will tell him I'm not going to, and then I can go in when he relaxes and tickle him again. And I remember the look on his face and thinking, or I could do what I say I'm going to do and he will trust me. And there was some sense of power in that I wanted somebody to trust me. And so I chose to not tickle him again. And I decided then and there that I wanted my words to mean something. I don't know that I ever cared before that. And so this might be a chance in your life for you to say, I really want what I say to matter. And it can start with, Mommy, is there really a Santa? So if you think about all of the make believe in a child's world, they are very capable of understanding make believe. They are capable of understanding magic. And it is perfectly okay to want a little magic in our lives. And so when I decided I was not going to tell my child that there was a Santa, I also decided that I was still going to do the things that create the magic. And the secret that I'll let you in on is once you decide whether you're going to or not, if you choose not to do that, you get so much more peace and relaxation because it is less work to have to always perpetuate this lie, I guess, right? Like we talk about, it's easier to tell the truth than a lie because you have to keep track of all the lies you tell to support the lie. Well, it kind of is the same. I worked with a lady once when I was in my 20s, and she came into work and everyone was talking about Santa and do your kids believe? Do your kids believe? And she made this statement. Well, her child was 8. And she said, well, my child is starting to think that there isn't one. And I just said, well, if you don't believe, then there will be no presents under the tree. And I remember being horrified. That was before I even made my decision, that it seemed punitive. It seemed not conducive to wanting her child to challenge things. And we want our children to challenge things. We want them to challenge what someone else is telling them. We want them to know that their brain is working well. And when they have a challenge, if it isn't correct, we can teach them how to decide it isn't correct. But if we shut them down, then they may not choose to come back to us again. And that's the fear when we do these things. So not only did we decide that we weren't going to lie about that, but then I also knew that then I had to live the life I wanted my children to be. So that comes down to drinking and driving and all of those things that we sort of have an attitude about, that when they're an adult, they'll do it. And they will, because we've set that up that way. I remember being a part of parent council, and there was a whole discussion around the grade 8 graduation. And there were talk among parents about how there would be a party afterward and how every parent thought of that. And I was amazed to find out how many parents believe this adage that doesn't matter what I tell my child, they're going to do it anyway. And I don't believe in that. I think that if we tell our children the truth, they will learn to recognize it. So there is a statement about the idea of telling your children what you want them to know before other people will have an opportunity to tell them. We want to tell them whatever it is that we want them to know at the age level they are capable of handling it. We don't want to burden them. We don't need them to know more than they need to know. But I know, even talking about sex education with our children, we did it at a very early age. And I had a son come to me in grade 2 and say, I am so thankful, probably not in those words, that you told me the truth about sex, because now when the kids at school talk about it, I know they don't know, because the truth made sense and the untruth was a little fantastical. And so back to talking about Christmas and Santa, and then of course Santa being also kind of turned into a Christian holiday. So then there's it's kind of intermingled, and it causes confusion for people. So because I myself chose that journey based on honesty, I wanted to do a little bit of research and explain from my research where Santa Claus even originated from. And so I made some notes just to keep me on the kind of straight and narrow. So it started actually by a monk whose name was Nicholas, and he was made a saint. I'm not 100% sure when. He was born in 280 AD in Patara, which is modern Turkey area. He was born to rich people, and they died when he was young and left him a fortune. And he spent his time sharing that with people who were needy. And often it was children. And the famous story that is known about him is that there were three sisters, strangely enough, a Christian family, and they could not marry their children off, and they were going to have to sell them as slaves. And this monk, Saint Nicholas, gave them a dowry so that they were able to be married. So that is his big doing that people talk of. However, later on in life, so he died in 323, I believe. And I actually didn't understand this. I just learned this, that in those days, people actually celebrated death, the death of someone, more than the birth of someone, partially because record keeping was scarce and hard, and also because of the idea that if you died, you were going to be wherever the God that you served was. And so it was your rebirth. So this monk died December the 6th. And this group of people, the pagans, they celebrated his death on December the 6th. Now, there was a whole bunch of history that I'm not going to bore you with, but there was a Protestant Reformation, and all of this became something that people decided they wanted to be a part of so that they could preach Christianity to people who had more of a belief in more than one God, polytheistic, and that is who the pagans were at the time. The term pagan after the Middle Ages was a term given to anyone who wasn't Christian. But prior to that, it was just anyone who believed in more than one God and not the God that the Jewish people believed in. And so along comes so the people who actually kind of kept this monk and his giving to children alive were the Dutch people. And they then immigrated to America. And in America, that's where it became more commercialized. I did not write down the dates of when it was in Rome, when the Christian, namely the Catholic Church, decided that they wanted to kind of be a part of these pagan festivals. Because if they could become a part of the pagan festivals, then they could sort of preach about their God. And that's how they kind of attributed themselves to the festival. At this point in time, they had not said it was the birth of Christ or any of that is now attributed to Christmas. It truly was just this saint who was doing good things for people. So now we jump ahead and we are in America in the 1700s. And the Dutch people who had immigrated to America were still celebrating St. Nicholas' death on December the 6th. And it became known and was written about in 1773 in the New Yorker, I believe, but don't quote me on that. And it became a federal holiday in 1870. So it's been a federal holiday for a very long time, but it had a whole life before that. So the Dutch people, their translation of St. Nicholas was, now did I write that down? But it became Santa Claus or something like that. And the Americans turned that into Santa Claus. And so that's where that came. There were points in the early days that St. Nicholas, because he was a saint and a monk, he was dressed very much in the tall patriarchal hat that we see some priests wear. His garments were very priestly. And then it got changed over time and it was like a coat with leggings. And so his image has changed over the years. And it wasn't until the 1800s when department stores and all of the American commercialization of Santa Claus happened that he became the chubby guy that he is now. So I thought it was fascinating. And then I decided, well, when did it become a religious holiday? So that started back when the back in Rome when the Catholics decided that they wanted to have other people learn about this. And so when you think of the nativity, I read an article that a priest had written, and he said that the drummer boy and the star and all of those portions of the songs and the heraldry that we have around it, that's all been added. It's not scriptural at all. And yet, so therefore, also is all of the traditions around St. Nicholas and Santa Claus. It's all been added over the years. The Salvation Army, we all see them standing with their money jar and their bell. They started back in the 1800s dressing up homeless men in the suits of Santa to collect money to feed the homeless. And so it has just garnered strength as it kept moving. And the base of it all is kindness. A monk, he had money, he helped people, and all of the other parts of it are just up for interpretation, depending on historian, depending on what you have heard and read and carried through in your family. But I still think we could talk to our children and explain that to them. I think it still has a wonderful story. I still think it's all about love. And I think that that was what this one priest who wrote about it stated, is that anything that gets us talking about being kind and considerate and helping each other, why not? And so the message doesn't have to change. The concept doesn't have to change. You can choose to believe in it as a Christian. I don't. I believe in it as a commercial holiday that we can spend time with family and we can have fun with our children and we can buy them things that they need or that they want, depending on your economic standpoint. And we can just take that time to build relationships with people we love. And so I don't think we need to lie about that. I don't think we need to create this pressure on our children to doubt who they are if they start to use their own common sense. I read an article written by 5 different psychologists, and they claim because it's a unified lie, a lie that everyone tells, it doesn't seem to have the same damage as other lies we might tell our children. But they did suggest that if you want closeness and you want your children to believe you, why would you perpetuate a lie? And so I want to just say that have fun. But like what we were allowed to do, we could celebrate Christmas whenever we wanted. So if our family wanted us down, because we were the family that lived furthest from our family, and we wanted to have that quiet morning with our children, we did it after Christmas or before Christmas. And they just understood. It was never an issue. We left the cookie, we did the reindeer feed in the snow. And there were times they would look at us and say, but it's not real, right, Mom? And I would say, that's right. It's just for fun. We don't expect them to believe Cinderella and Prince Charming is real. We don't expect them to believe that superheroes are going to help them out, or when your little 3-year-old boy turns his wrists and pretends he's Spider-Man, we don't check it out and wonder why there's no webbing coming out of his hand. So I'm not quite sure why we jumped on the bandwagon of wanting them to believe in something like that. And so in a world where we need to feel that we can trust and where we want to believe that people have our back, I would just offer that maybe we could just say that it's real only in the sense of having a magical time. It's real only in the sense that we make efforts because we are busy, and it's a chance to do that because we have a holiday and we have time to spend with each other. So I leave that with you. You choose. I had an interesting talk with someone this week about their child coming home saying that another kid at school had sworn, and their response was, well, I hope you didn't swear. And I just feel like we need to teach differently. We need to say, because I asked that parent, do you swear? Yes, I do. And so there's this, if you want to swear and you're okay that your child is going to swear, then maybe don't worry about it, but teach them where you think it's appropriate to swear. So I'm not telling you how to raise your children. I just want you to be real with them. And so what I had suggested to that parent was, maybe what you say is, that's really unfortunate that child said those words. She must have been really angry. I wonder why she was angry, and focus on the emotion. And then say to your child, if you don't want them to swear, maybe we could find better words. Or if you're okay with them swearing, then teach the appropriateness of what you're expecting them to handle that like. A little bit more time to parent in that fashion for sure, but your children will bring to you their concerns. Your children will talk to you about things when they know that you are as honest as you can be with them. And keep in mind, you want that to be at the level they can handle, and they can handle more than you can imagine. As long as they can still trust you and not feel fear or worry in their life, you've done a good job. And so look forward to this next month of planning and festivities. And the other thing, I know a lot of parents are going to say, but what about the other kids at school? Well, there are many cultures in our country now, and many cultures have many different ways of celebrating. And so I always told my children, you know what? Some people want to believe in it differently than we do. So it's not your place to tell them that. You can just smile and know that you have something different, or you can ask about their way of understanding what they do, but do not spend time trying to tell them something that might make them unhappy. And that also is a neat lesson that you can teach your children. I had a teacher call me once and say, "Oh dear, she almost did it." But he knew. I told my teachers that I haven't told my children there is a Santa. So, and I've also told them not to share, that let people have their own lives. And so your teacher can help with that. And a lot of teachers now, they're doing a lot about multicultural celebrations and learning about that with the kids. And so they can handle that too. So again, enjoy the season, enjoy the fun, have some magic, and share that with your kids. And hopefully this has been thought-provoking for you. Have a great Monday. As much as I enjoy discussions, I also want to provide a service to people who would like more. If you want to do more than listen, get in touch with me with the links in the description. You can also email me through hello@beyondwishfulthinking.ca. And I'd like to give you content you enjoy, so please leave a review wherever you're listening to this podcast. If you're watching through my YouTube channel, leave your comments below. If you want more of Beyond Wishful Thinking podcasts, make sure to subscribe for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you are listening right now.